Let me begin where I ended, and that's with this chart. Matt, if you can put that up. This is the kind of the harsh reality that we all confront. Yeah, it's not anybody's fault. It's because of a changing of transportation financing in this country. The green line is the revenue of the trust fund. And basically it goes from $36 billion a year to $40 billion a year, basically flat for the entire 6 years. And we had a gap before we ever enter this 6-year period, as can be seen in 2011, where the expenditures were $43 billion, which Senator Sessions mentioned, and the income was $36 billion. So we start with a gap of $7 billion, and that gap grows dramatically as we go towards 2021, 10 years out, so that a $7 billion gap per year turns into a gap of $18 billion. That's under the baseline. That just takes the current program and extends it. That does not capture what the President is proposing, which is an actual increase. So the question that we have before us is, what are the options for closing this gap? And what is your assessment of how realistic those various options are? That's really my first question to you. What do you see as the options for closing this gap, and what's your assessment of how realistic those various options are?
Well, look, at the Highway Trust Fund is deficient. There's no question about it. People are driving less. They're driving more fuel-efficient automobiles. We know that, and as things continue to stay stirred up in the Middle East, in countries that produce crude oil, we know that gasoline prices are going to continue to go up, and probably as a result, people will be driving maybe even less frequently than they are today. It's probably not going to help us in our collection of the gas tax. The Highway Trust Fund helped us build a state-of-the-art interstate system. There's no debate about that. I mean, we have one of the best interstate systems anywhere in the world, and we want to work with Congress on our way forward. I think the one thing that people ought to recognize is that our budget is a budget that will put people to work. For the $48 billion that we received in the Economic Recovery Plan, we created 15,000 projects and 65,000 jobs. Our money actually helped people build roads in your states. We know that the work that we do and that our budget will reflect increased jobs, increased opportunities to get economies going in the states. Mr. Chairman, we want to work with Congress on the way forward. There can be no dispute about the fact this is a big, bold plan. This is a big vision, thanks to the President, because the President recognizes this is a jobs bill. When you all pass a transportation bill or pass our budget, you're going to create jobs. That's the one thing that everybody recognizes. There's no debate about that. So we want to work with you on trying to find the resources that we know will put our friends and neighbors to work, building our infrastructure, and creating a 21st century transportation system that really reflects the values for the next generation, the way that others did for our generation.
Well, I agree with your basic statement here. I mean, there's no question in my mind that these highway funding initiatives, bridge funding initiatives, transit funding initiatives create jobs in the United States, and they're also critically important to our competitive position. Do we have an assessment of what the lost productivity is because of a deficient infrastructure system in terms of transportation?
You know, I don't have that figure, but we'll see if some of our smart people can get that for you. I've never really heard that articulated in the department, but I'm sure we can find it.
You know, I'd be very interested. I asked the question because any day after 4 o'clock, if you leave here and you go out on the major arteries, 395, 295, 95, often as not, they're stopped dead. And I see trucks delivering goods across the country. They're idle. They're stopped dead in their tracks. There's got to be an economic cost to that. And I believe the economic cost must be substantial because the East Coast and the West Coast, these arteries are clogged. Let me go back to the first question I asked because you answered about the importance of doing what has been proposed. The question we've got on this committee is how do we pay for it? And, of course, we can't direct the funding committees on how to raise the money. We can tell them how much money to raise. We can't tell them how to do it. But we have got to give them, to be credible, we've got to give them some options. Do we do gas tax? Do we move to some kind of an assessment that is based on how many miles vehicles go so that we capture revenue from those who are going to be using the roads who aren't going to be paying any gas tax or very little with hybrids and electric cars? Do we go to more tolling? I've just had, as I told you, my head of my transportation department back home, Francis Ziegler, in to see me yesterday. He said, Kent, in North Dakota, tolling doesn't work at all. It doesn't make any sense in a big, wide open state like ours, sparsely populated. What options do you see? Are there options that I've not listed there that we should be thinking about?
Mr. Chairman, tolling is an option, not in every state. I just met with the two governors of Oregon and Washington. They're proposing to build a bridge across the Columbia River. It's a great project. It's about as multimodal as you can get. And it's going to use, there's going to be a transit system that runs across that bridge. There's going to be availability if somebody wants to ride their bike across the bridge, and there's going to be availability for people to drive across that bridge. And they're going to pay for part of it with tolling. They're going to pay for part of it with state resources. They're going to pay for part of it with federal resources. But tolling is a good way for those two states to, think big and dream big for this Columbia River crossing.
But you'd acknowledge that in some states tolling is really not a very viable option.
I don't think it probably works in your state, Mr. Chairman, but there are a lot of states where it does work. And you know what a lot of states are thinking about doing? Adding capacity. Taking an interstate that was built with taxpayer money, putting a couple additional lanes on it, and tolling that. They've done that in Miami where they call it a hot lane. They build a lane, and they toll it. And you can raise a lot of money and actually pay for a project like that. We support that kind of opportunity where you can add capacity and use tolling to help pay for it. And then, leverage that with maybe some money from our department, leverage it against maybe some private dollars. Look, our idea is this. Highway Trust Fund is going to be around. It's deficient. We know that. Tolling, couple it with tolling. We have a TIFIA loan program that the President has talked about in his budget, infrastructure bank, with significant billions of dollars. You leverage all those together, you can begin to do big things in America. People can then think about dreaming big again. Does that get us to everything we want or everything that we think is necessary? No, that's why we need your help on this. Look, I agree with what Senator Sessions said. If some of us had been writing the stimulus bill, it would have been more than $48 billion. We spent every one of those dollars the way that you all directed us. No boondoggles, no earmarks, no sweetheart deals. You haven't seen any bad stories written about the $48 billion. And what it did, it created 15,000 projects that put 65,000 people to work over 2 years that would not have had a job if you all hadn't given us that authority and given us that money. The stimulus worked.
I can say, and this is, we'll turn to Senator Sessions because my time is over. I remember very well the battle. A group of us proposed a $200 billion stimulus package as part of the overall stimulus plan, and we lost that fight. But we didn't lose it because you opposed it. You did not oppose it. You were an ally. So I think it should be stated publicly. There were others who did oppose it, and I remember them well.